Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Brown, for being here today and talking with us and being candid. One of the things that's developed out of Parliament, perhaps since you were here, is there seems to be a precedent that's been set to invite people or summon people before the bar of the House of Commons for not telling the truth. So it's always nice to have somebody who's candid here and who's willing to be honest and forthright. My question, I asked you when I started the last time about Pierre Poilievre or his office, any contact with you prior to today's meeting. What about the Conservative Party of Canada or anybody representing them or anybody relaying any messages to you? Any contact from anybody in preparation for today's meeting?
So there's only two MPs I spoke to. I spoke to MP Doug Shipley, who is a personal friend, about a family matter. And I also spoke to MP Equinder here, who is your chair and someone that I've got great respect for, and is a local Peel Region MP. And more in case of both of them, was more that you're coming to.
And I'm super surprised. And I'm super surprised that Mr. Shipley's not here today. He's a member of this committee, yet he didn't even want to be here.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I don't believe that's in order.
No, that's only in the House.
I don't believe that's in order.
Did my?
I also corroborate what Ms. O'Connell just said. Having read the rules recently, it's a rule on the House floor, not in committee.
You've stopped my time, I imagine. So, Mr. Brown, let's go back to some of the comments that were made by senior officials in your campaign. So one individual said, supporters from the Hindu community were being told that they were not allowed to sign up members for Patrick Brown by officials of the Indian consulate. Now, I know, and you've already told us, that you're unaware of that comment, but out of curiosity, would you consider that foreign interference if that had been the case? And if that is proven, would you be concerned that your campaign was interfered with by a foreign government?
So I think that would meet the threshold of certainly being foreign interference.
You think it would meet the threshold, right?
Correct.
Would you say that the people that you brought into your campaign were trustworthy people? That, I mean, obviously, if they were in senior positions of your campaign, you would trust them, right?
I think we had some great people involved in the campaign.
Yeah, and if it is true that these individuals were from your campaign, then, I mean, there's no reason not to believe them, right?
Well, I think you'd have to speak to them directly. And what I was trying to say...
No, that's not what I'm asking you, Mr. Brown. I'm not asking you about speaking to them. I'm saying you trust the people in your campaign. You think that they're honorable people. And you if they say something, it should be believed. And I think you've already made that clear, correct?
I think that's fair to say that I think they're good, trustworthy people.
Yeah, something else that one of them said was, it was also made clear to organizers of events that Indian consulates had told them you can't invite Patrick Brown to these diaspora kind of events where the consulate is going to be involved. Were you aware that you were not allowed to go to events where the consulate was being involved?
There was one event mentioned in that CBC article that I can share. I was disinvited to that event.
So let's pick up on that for a second, Mr. Brown. So you are aware of this event, and whoever this anonymous source was aware of the event. Therefore, it must mean that these people were actually part of your campaign. I mean, how else could they have known about the event that you have also just said you knew about? I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that the sources were actually close and high up in your campaign. Would you not agree?
I think in the case of that event,
sorry, let me rephrase that. You've made it very clear that you trust the people in your campaign. They're aware of this issue, anonymous sources. You're aware of the issue because you just admitted it to us here. So therefore, the individuals that are being cited as sources by the CBC must have been close to your campaign. Would you not agree with that? What other conclusion could you possibly draw?
I think you'd have to ask those sources.
I don't know. I'm asking you if you draw the same conclusion as me.
So what I'd say is I can answer any question about the incidents that were raised. And
Yeah, I
answer
know,
them
but
directly
I mean,
myself.
like, just thinking about this, think about it for a second. I'm drawing a conclusion that since you knew about the fact you were disinvited, and they knew about the fact that you were disinvited, then obviously they had to have been very close to your campaign, and therefore, I think it's safe to say we can treat these anonymous sources as being legitimate. I mean, I think that that's a fairly easy assessment to conclude on. You must agree with that, right?
You're asking me to agree with the assumptions you're making?
Yes, I am.
Um,
Would you
the
agree?
case of the event is, I think in the case of that event, there is a level of accuracy there.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Danshiro, for 5 minutes, and we're in the fourth round now.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, for being here and sitting through that last round of questions. I'm not going to apologize on behalf of the Liberals, but I mean, that was quite embarrassing. I would say, though, Mr. Brown, again, that I think that there's some serious allegations being lobbed at you here. Any comments of how that's the seriousness of which you feel some of these questions are coming? I mean, I just feel that's kind of silly at this point, but I'm just over to you for your thoughts.
Well, I think sometimes it's difficult to answer a long preamble with a yes, no, and so I think sometimes the nature of these questions are not a simple yes, no.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just want to go back again to some of the concerns you're hearing from your community. Again, this is certainly, as you know, a study on the interference or alleged interference in Canada from India. And you have outlined quite a bit, in fact, about how your community is feeling and the anxieties they're having over this. I'm hearing that as well. But you did mention Peel region in your last round with me. And we do know that the stats from police say that one woman is strangled every single day in Peel. Do you have any concerns? I mean, I'm sure obviously you do about the violence against women you're seeing, but how has your community reacted to this really quite revolting statistic in Canada in 2024? It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's horrifying. You know, we've declared a gender-based violence epidemic in Peel region. The city of Brampton has as well. We've got a councillor, Rowena Santos, and Councillor Navjeet Brar, who have been quite outspoken and in raising concerns around this epidemic we're struggling with. You know, I sit on the Peel Police Services Board, and I look at all the statistics. The one that I find most harrowing is, as a society, we have not effectively dealt with the rise, and it continues. And I believe when I started 6 years ago as mayor, I looked at the number for IPV, intimate partner violence, and it was 7,000 calls a year. I think we're up to close to 20,000 now. And I don't think that's unique to Peel region. We're seeing that across the country, where there is an alarming rise in intimate partner violence. And we need to, as a society, find out how we can deal with this, because the current approach isn't working.
Did you say 20,000 cases of intimate partner violence? Sorry, just
20,000 calls
on intimate partner violence.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm very sorry that's happening in your community. And I had heard some of the statistics of what we're seeing. And of course, as you may know, according to the data, Canada is seeing a 75% increase in sexual assaults against women over the last 9 years, 120% increase in sexual violations against children, a 50% increase in violent crime, and 116% increase in gun crime. So it sounds, unfortunately, that your community is not safe from this either. I mean, this is the Public Safety and National Security Committee. Do you think that the issue of intimate partner violence and the violence we're seeing against women and children generally would be worth studying?
Absolutely. You know, we have some with some leaders in the Peel Police that I believe, if you had that study, would have a lot to offer.
We would very much like the opportunity to bring them here. And in fact, I have made many efforts to bring forward that issue at public safety. Of course, I feel, and as do my Conservative colleagues, that it is one of certainly the most pressing issues Canada is facing. The epidemic, as many municipalities, in fact 94, including yours, have called it an epidemic, intimate partner violence, and the province of Nova Scotia, the entire province. So we are making every effort to bring forward that study here. Unfortunately, I think Liberals, unfortunately, would rather talk about the questions we saw in the last round with you. So I do believe there's some misplaced priorities in that regard, but they can talk about whatever they wish. That is up to them. Mr. Brown, just to conclude in our last minute, can you just provide? I know you're a man of. You said you're a man of action. You want to take action, and not play politics. Can you just outline a few things for the committee that you think could be done to address intimate partner violence, in addition to the things you've already said?
We need a greater response to a greater capacity to respond in Canada. I think one thing that's not necessarily appreciated is that in many big cities, there are more 911 calls than officers able to respond. One thing I found alarming from the Peel Police Union is that there are intimate partner violence calls that go unresponded to, simply because there's no manpower to keep up with human resources able to keep up with the volume of priority one calls. And so each year there are more priority one calls that get pushed on the back burner. And I find that alarming. And so how do we, knowing how stressed police resources are, what can we do to better equip police forces to deal with this growing volume? And, there are things the federal government can do. I look at the amount of work we deal with in terms of repeat offenders. That's an area that I think the government of Canada could certainly help.
Great. Thank you. Ms. O'Connell, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.